Victoria's voice sliced through the silence like a knife. "I take this as an act of betrayal," she coldly spat, her eyes narrowing at me behind that huge mahogany desk that always seemed more like a throne than office equipment. I sat opposite, her gripping my handbag so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded, but my expression remained calm. The shock of being called at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday had worn off. Instead, there was a tight ball of fear in my belly. I knew where this was headed. "Victoria, don't bother." She cut through my words, as always, tapping a pointed nail on the typed-out email between us. "I have verification you interviewed at North Bay Solutions last Thursday. You said it was a dental appointment." Her smile nearly made me chuckle. "My name is Addison Walker. I'm 31. For 6 years, I committed every last bit of my talent, energy, and devotion to Harbor Point Communications. I created an empire of clients, generated millions in revenue, earned the confidence of the big accounts. But now, all that commitment was being discarded like yesterday's memo." Victoria's face didn't change as she pushed my company ID across the gleaming desk. "Security will take you to your desk. You are free to collect your things, but your access is being withdrawn effective immediately. Your email has already been disabled." Her words strike with the impact of a firing squad. I could feel the injustice smoldering hot in my chest. For 3 years in a row, I had walked into her office with well-rehearsed presentations, presenting evidence of my performance, salary comparables, documentation that I had earned a raise. 3 years of tight budgets, excuses while she waved. Quarterly meeting flags of record profits. Enough. I stood up, smoothing out my blazer as if I had practiced this moment all these years. "I see," I replied quietly. Her eyebrows rose infinitesimally. She'd hoped to have me break down, to plead, perhaps even to fold from the embarrassment. But instead, I reached out and put my hand on her desk. "I wish you and Harbor Point all the best." She lingered briefly before she switched hands to shake mine. Her expression puzzled. Minutes afterwards, I was standing at my desk, shoving family photos, framed certificates, and 6 years' worth of desk plants into a cardboard box, in front of a security guard who looked more embarrassed than I was. Coworkers looked at me pityingly, but I smiled serenely at them. No tearful breakdowns, no dramatic scenes, only dignity. When I finally emerged into the spring air, the April sun blazed against my face. Harbor Point's doors shut behind me forever. And in that instant, I knew something. Victoria believed she was destroying me, but she had just freed me. I loaded the box into my trunk. My phone vibrated. A new message illuminated the screen. "David Clean, CEO. North Bay Solutions. May I reschedule our last discussion for today, 2 p.m.? I couldn't suppress the grin that spread across my face. Victoria had no idea what hit her. It's odd how 6 years of your existence can fit into one box. And as I drove off from Harbor Point, that box safely in my trunk, something strong surged within me. Not regret, not sadness. Freedom. And freedom in the hands of a person like me was going to be the best revenge. Even though I had graduated from Washington State University with a degree in marketing, my life at Harbor Point had started in the trenches, fetching lattes, stapling reports, and taking meeting notes that no one read. But I wasn't designed to remain invisible. I worked late, took on the projects the rest of the team avoided, and rebuilt damaged client relationships others had written off as too difficult. 2 years later, I was working mid-sized accounts. 4 years in, I was at the head of the table, running North Bay Solutions' beauty of our portfolio, equal to almost a third of Harbor Point's yearly revenues. When their own rep crumbled under stress, I moved in and saved a failing campaign. I'll never forget David Clean, CEO of North Bay, shaking my hand after that meeting. "You're the only one who understands what we require before we even have to say it." He had said from that moment on, their allegiance wasn't to Harbor Point, it was to me. North Bay doubled the contract, opened up the budget, and Victoria had been beaming with approval. "This is the type of initiative we appreciate here," she'd explained. "Appreciated, yes. Compensated, no." I asked for my first raise immediately after that triumph. My palms didn't sweat when I said the figures: outperformance markers, revenue increase, industry recognition. The proof was there. Her face was practiced, near yawn. "It's just not budgeted for this year, but your input is recorded." I took it at the time. The economy was fragile, and I rationalized patience would be rewarded. But the following year, after I pulled in 3 major clients and won an industry award for a campaign everyone else had written off as impossible, the answer was the same. "Next year will be better," Victoria promised. "We just need to tighten our belts a little longer, tie our belts tighter." She told me that while I was driving to work in my new luxury SUV, while Harbor Point was partying over growing into a whole new floor of our building. Nevertheless, I remained faithful, believing that faithfulness at some point or another would pay off. But 6 months prior, when I alone negotiated a 40% jump in North Bay's contract value, I was again in that office. This time, the mask slipped just far enough for me to recognize the truth. "Your performance is outstanding, Addison," Victoria said with a smoothness. "But this year, we're spending on infrastructure. Maybe we can revisit this in the summer." That was when something within me broke. Not fury, not retribution. Something more profound: self-respect. I sat down with my laptop that evening, opened a blank file, and rebooted my resume for the first time in 6 years. Not because I was looking to quit, but because I refused to continue accepting unbroken promises. What I didn't plan was for Victoria to discover before I was ready to submit my resignation. At home, the cardboard box rested like a reproach on my kitchen counter. I glared at it, unwavering, as though it could respond to the question. Pounding in my heart, what now? For the first time today, it all landed on me. I wasn't between meetings. I wasn't off. I was out of a job, and pressure crushed so hard into my chest, I had to hang onto the counter just to catch my breath. The shrill ring of my phone broke the silence. Olivia's name illuminated the screen. I swiped to respond, and her voice cut through before mine did. "I just heard. Thomas texted me. Addison, are you okay?" Thomas, the IT guy at Harbor and Olivia's boyfriend. Word spread quick. I collapsed onto a stool in the kitchen, fatigue washing over me like a wave. "I'm processing," I confessed. It all went so fast. Her anger came fast and biting. "It's completely unfair. Everyone knows you're the only reason North Bay even stayed with Harbor Point this long." Her words cut deeper than she realized. Because if there was one truth that Victoria hadn't considered, it was this: North Bay wasn't Harbor Point's client anymore. They were mine. "Victoria's just threatened," Olivia snapped. "She knows you're better at the job than she ever was." Her words struck a nerve. There was truth there. Before her promotion, Victoria had been Harbor Point's star account executive, the golden child. But management had pulled her away from client work, and I'd watched her struggle with the loss of that spotlight. She couldn't resist inserting herself into my meetings with North Bay hovering, interrupting, trying to reassert control. The worst thing, I said, my voice straining, was how she did it. Like I was treasonous for craving what I'd already worked for. 3 years of rejection, and then suddenly I'm the bad guy for seeking elsewhere. "It's her loss," Olivia fired back, heat in her voice. "Honestly, Addison, perhaps this is what you needed. You've been underappreciated for years." She was correct. I'd remained at Harbor Point for the humans, for my clients, for my staff. But being let out by security, accused of being a criminal for having the nerve to ask for better, that stung. Deeper than I cared to acknowledge. A crisp beep cut across my mind. Another call was on the way. I looked at the screen. David Clean. Olivia, I have to take this, I muttered hastily. It's North Bay. Then go, she pushed. Call me afterwards. I drew a deep breath and replied, Addison, David's voice sounded on. The line crisp and to the point. I just received word about what went on at Harbor Point. Can you please come on in today? I'd appreciate it if we could continue our discussion. My heart began racing. Yes, 2 works just fine. Good. A silence, and then his tone softened. And Addison, don't let this morning get you down. Sometimes the worst endings pave the way for the best beginnings. When the line clicked dead, I glimpsed myself in the kitchen window. The woman looking back wasn't broken. She wasn't discarded. She was free. I walked with intent. Shower. Suit. The one I saved for high-level pitches. Makeup crisp, precise, calculated. Each gesture was defense. Victoria believed she'd destroyed me this morning. In reality, she'd simply made clear what I'd always known too well. Never again would I invest my talent in people too short-sighted to see its value. It was time to cease requesting a seat at the table. It was time to occupy the head of it. North Bay Solutions headquarters shone like a glass citadel against the Spokane backdrop, its top 3 floors shining in the sunlight. Inside, it was all smooth open spaces, collaborative pods, glass walls, with endless views of the mountains. A universe away from Harbor Point's beige cubicles and hum of fluorescent lights. The elevator whirred as it ascended to the 30th floor. I straightened, practicing my lines. This was not just an interview. It was my testimony. I would tell him about my unexpected availability with class, not vitriol. Professional, groomed because. Revenge is quiet. It's calculated. The doors parted, and there he was. David Clean himself. Addison, he said warmly, holding out his hand. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, commanding presence. Brilliant, fair, and firm. The very same qualities that had made me respect him over 3 years of business partnership. And in that instant, I knew Harbor Point hadn't only lost me today. They'd lost their future. I welcome the flexibility, I said, shaking David's hand firmly. It's been an unexpected day. Let's talk in my office, he said, leading me past the buzz of North Bay's open floor. Familiar faces, employees I'd collaborated with over the years, looked up, smiling or nodding. It felt different here, lighter, as if people were energized instead of drained. David's corner office was not an ego shrine like Victoria's. No intimidating oversized desk, no carefully curated display piece. Rather, cozy chairs, warm wood tones, and sunlight splashing across the room. A place for dialogue, not games of dominance. Coffee? He asked. Please, I replied. Once we settled, he didn't dawdle. I received a call from Victoria Sanders this morning, David began, his tone crisp. She informed me you'd no longer be handling our account and that she would personally oversee things until a replacement was assigned. I kept my face neutral, though inside, a flame of anger flickered. Of course Victoria would swoop in, desperate to keep North Bay under her thumb. What she doesn't know, David continued, leaning back slightly, is that we've already been concerned about our relationship with Harbor Point. That caught me off guard. Concerned? The last campaign exceeded projections by 23%. Yes, he said, leaning forward now, due to you. But aside from your work, we've experienced delays, variable quality, and honestly complacency. Except when you were on the case. 3 months ago, our board recommended that we seek out other partners. I fought it because of you. You've provided us with more than outcomes, Addison. You've provided us with insight. You get us in a way no one else at Harbor Point ever has. My heart began to pound. Was this going somewhere I thought it was? David's expression softened, but his tone remained resolute. When you contacted us about opportunities here, it seemed like perfect timing. But let me make something clear. We never contemplated poaching you. We hold professional boundaries in too high regard for that. We were willing to wait until you provided proper notice. I was going to, I whispered. 2 weeks when I had something official in print. He smiled, a sly one. I thank you. And that professionalism is precisely why you're sitting here today. Honestly, Victoria's choice this morning only sped up the inevitable. He opened a folder and pushed a document across the desk to me. This is not an interview, Addison. This is a job offer. Director of Client Strategy. The word struck me like a clap of thunder. My fingers traced the paper, my gaze fixed on the salary amount at the bottom. My breath stopped. Almost twice what Harbor Point had ever offered me. Higher than I'd had the nerve to ask for when Victoria cut me off for the third time. This is very generous, I stammered. Not generous, David corrected without skipping. A beat, market value. Something Harbor Point never provided you. You sometimes have to get out of a place to really know your worth. I sat there, the offer letter clutched in my hand, and finally felt, for the first time that day, relief and power. That night, the letter sat on my kitchen counter, signed and awaiting return in the morning. I'd requested an evening to consider, but we both knew it wasn't true. My response had been yes. The second that folder crossed the desktop, Victoria believed she'd cut me down. But what she had done was give me the tool I needed. And tomorrow, when Harbor Point realized that North Bay was taking off with me, Victoria Sanders would finally learn what real repercussions looked like. I'd already made up my mind, but out of habit and professionalism, I gave myself the courtesy of time. Big decisions deserved reflection. Even when the answer was obvious. My phone rang incessantly that afternoon. Messages pouring in from Harbor Point. Word of my termination had circulated like wildfire, spread on whispers and Slack pings. Rumors of my trip to North Bay were not far behind. I replied to a handful of trusted coworkers, but made no reply to the rest. I was not going to be pulled into office rumors. Then a message from Thomas illuminated my screen. Thomas, Victoria's scheduled an emergency meeting. Informed everyone that you had been fired for disloyalty. Spun the entire diatribe on how Harbor Point values loyalty over everything. The irony was not lost on everyone. I couldn't help but nod my head. Victoria was frantically attempting to make me a bad example. But based on Thomas's tone, her drama was not having the desired effect. Another ping. This one from receptionist Jessica. Jessica, she's been holed up in her office all afternoon on the phone. Looks frazzled. Guess someone's concerned about North Bay. I didn't react. There was no triumph in her hysteria. Just affirmation of what I already understood. Harbor Point was a company that required allegiance without offering anything back. That chapter was done. My phone rang again, this time an unfamiliar number. I paused, then picked it up. Addison Walker, a female voice. Sharp, composed, speaking. Hello, this is Elaine Winters. I'm a member of Harbor Point Communications Board of Directors. My gut contracted. Board members didn't get involved in daily employee issues unless something was very, very amiss. I hear there was a situation today about your working here, Elaine went on cautiously. I'd like to see you tomorrow. Victoria might have jumped the gun with her decision. And that was that. Victoria had gone rogue, fired her most important account manager without permission, and now the board was playing damage control. I took a breath and calmed my voice. Thank you for calling, Ms. Winters, but I have already accepted another offer. A pause. Could I ask where? I don't think it would be right to say at this point. Another break, but this one a heavier one. Addison, if this is compensation related, I promise you we can talk about it. The board appreciates your work, the irony cut with precision. For 3 years, I'd presented irrefutable evidence of my value tripling accounts, multi-million-dollar transactions, awards. I'd been denied each time. And now, out of the blue, I was valuable? Not about money, I said bluntly. About respect. About acknowledging an employee's value before they've got 1 foot out the door. Maybe we should talk face to face, Elaine urged. Tomorrow morning, 9, I stalled. I didn't want to go back, but the idea of going into that building one last time, not as a supplicant, but as a victor who'd already gotten out, had some lure. Closure has a certain strength. I'll be there at 9, I said. But let me be firm, I've signed elsewhere. I'm not here to negotiate a comeback. Okay, she replied, but her skeptical tone betrayed her. We'll see you tomorrow. When the call was over, I opened a bottle of wine and stepped out onto my balcony. The city stretched out below me, aglow with the light of dusk. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't Harbor Point's workhorse. I was free dot, and tomorrow morning, I wasn't going in there as an employee. I approached as the storm. The spring evening was chilly, the sort that held a still electricity. City lights flickered to life as twilight wrapped around the skyline. Tomorrow hung in my thoughts, not a battle I had pursued, but maybe one I required. An opportunity to lay Harbor Point to rest with words more biting than quiet. An email beeped. On my phone. Subject, welcome to the team. From David Clean. My destiny was already set. Whatever tomorrow brought, one thing was true. I wasn't returning. The following morning, entering Harbor Point's lobby was unreal. Not as an employee, but as a guest. My heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that felt eerily conclusive. Jessica glanced up from behind the reception desk. Her eyes spread wide before she could catch herself, her carefully honed smile wavering. Addison, you're here for Ms. Winters? That's right. I signed the visitor's log, the pen strokes heavier and heavier with each one. Jessica leaned forward, speaking in a whisper. For what it's worth, everyone's saying this was wrong. You were the best we had. Her words hung between us, soft armor against scabbard over wounds. Thank you, Jessica. The doors of the elevator opened. I was alone, smoothing the lapel of my navy suit. I hadn't dressed to impress anyone. I dressed to remind me and everyone in that building that I wasn't a fallen worker looking for clemency. I was going in as an equal. Elaine Winters stood in the conference room, a thin folder lying in front of her. In her 60s, sharp silver hair trimmed with surgeon's accuracy, she exuded the sort of confidence reserved for those who signed off on million-dollar deals before breakfast. She stood when I approached. Ms. Walker, thanks for coming. Her handshake was cool, calculated. Sit, please. Victoria's absence was silent. A tacit acknowledgement that this was more than an overwrought tantrum from one manager. Elaine opened the folder. 6 years. Strong performance reviews all along. Increasing portfolio of accounts. And 3 salary adjustment requests. All denied. She raised her eyes, her expression steady but inscrutable. I didn't know about this pattern. That took me aback. I thought decisions about pay were referred to board level. Significant changes, yes, she said, her tone smooth but laced. With disapproval. Within limits, management has its discretion. Victoria used it liberally. I nodded marginally. I see. She turned over a page, her face compressing. What I don't see is any record justifying your dismissal. There is no rule against interviewing other companies. I modulated my voice, kept it even. The term she used was disloyal. Elaine's brow rose, the slightest flash of contempt seeping past her facade. A curious selection. under the circumstances. She slammed the folder shut with a soft clunk that seemed more like a sentence, her gaze locked onto mine. Let's not dance around it. The board wishes to reinstate you effective today, with the raise you asked for at your last review, and an extra 10%, and the title Senior Account Director. It was on paper the finest offer Harbor Point had ever placed before me, 3 years too late. And after one very public embarrassment, I allowed the silence to hang and then responded, "That's kind of you. But as I stated on the phone, I've accepted another offer already." Elaine's gaze narrowed ever so slightly. "At North Bay Solutions? No question." A statement I neither affirmed nor negated. Meeting her eye, I simply said, "I believe you understand where I am." My new position started Monday. Elaine looked at me for a moment before I departed Harbor Point for the last time. "Victoria is upset. North Bay is considering ending their business with us now that you've left." And there it was. The truth revealed. This appointment wasn't about me. It was about fear of losing a client worth millions of dollars. I maintained a level tone. That would be something for North Bay to determine. Elaine nodded barely at all, as if she admired the control. "Last question. What would Harbor Point have done differently to retain you?" She replied without hesitation. "Hear my worth before I went seeking it elsewhere. Loyalty is a two-way street, Ms. Winters. Harbor Point asked for loyalty, but consistently demonstrated that I wasn't worth the investment. That doesn't work forever." For the first time, I noticed something flicker in her eyes' acknowledgement. Perhaps even regret. "A fair judgment," she stated softly, holding out her hand. "Thank you for your honesty. I wish you luck." And in that instant, I left Harbor Point, no longer as the woman they discarded, but as the one who would not bow. Closure. A surprise gift. Monday morning carried a mix of nerves and exhilaration. North Bay Solutions. A fresh chapter. My new office was bright, with windows overlooking the city, a far cry from the cramped cubicle I'd been shoved into at Harbor Point. On my desk, a welcome basket and a perfectly arranged setup, courtesy of David. At 9 sharp, he appeared with a grin. "Addison, time to meet your team." 5 marketing professionals stood in the conference room. 5 keen minds that would work for me. David made the introduction quickly but with force. "Everyone, meet Addison Walker, our new Director of Client Strategy. You know, some of you probably have heard of her from Harbor Point. We're fortunate to have her on staff." Applause. Friendly smiles. For the first time in years, I felt visible. Then David gestured me into the large conference room. There, a number of North Bay's executive staff were seated in a circle around the gleaming table. "Before you get into the day-to-day," David started, "we wanted to get your feedback on something." The CFO leaned forward, his voice businesslike but pointed. "Given recent events, we're reconsidering our arrangement with Harbor Point. Their renewal comes up next month." The CMO spoke next. "You know them better than anybody. We'd appreciate your insight." I leaned back in my chair, the gravity of the situation weighing on me. Harbor Point had once considered me expendable. Now their destiny rested in my hands. The executives were looking at me. They knew I had a history with Harbor Point. They knew I had motive to bury them, and the fact of the matter, I could have, with one sentence, I had the power to cut their lifeline. Termination, instant, permanent. The idea stuck with me like a knife in my palm. Victoria would never even get a warning. One email from me and her empire would hemorrhage. That wasn't me anymore. I folded my hands on the table, my voice measured. We should evaluate Harbor Point the same way we'd evaluate anyone else. Their creative work is strong, yes, but consistency and account management, those will make or break the relationship moving forward. Professional, controlled, surgical. Week later, On a Wednesday morning, exactly 7 days after Victoria fired me, the email went out. Following thorough comparison of account proposals from other competing agencies, North Bay Solutions has resolved to move our account to Meridian. Creative as of immediately. This move is in line with our new brand strategy. Our new Director of Client Strategy, Addison Walker, will be handling the transition. The words were courteous, businesslike, last, but under the veneer of politeness was the wrecking ball. Harbor Point had just lost North Bay, almost a third of their revenue lost, and I would be the one smoothing the way. I didn't have to whisper one uncomplimentary word. I didn't have to destroy anything. Harbor Point's cracks were there all along. My resignation simply brought them to light. By mid-afternoon, a message appeared on LinkedIn. Jessica, Harbor Point's receptionist. The office is chaos. Victoria's been in meetings all day. 3 account managers are already updating their resumes. Karma works fast. I glared at the screen, then closed the message without response. Number. Gloating required. No need to twist the knife. Rather, I accepted her connection request with a simple note. Thanks for your consideration while I was at Harbor Point. Best regards to you. The high road had never tasted so sweet. I dove into the weeks that followed, investing myself in North Bay, developing my team, establishing strategies, shaping a future Harbor Point had never permitted me to envision, and deep in the stillness of my mind, the truth took root. Sometimes vengeance isn't destruction. It's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will acknowledge your value. A year afterward, I realized what Victoria actually gave me that day. She dismissed me, not humiliation, not defeat, but liberation. The nudge I needed to get back up. And ultimately, the sweetest revenge wasn't her RUINATION. It was my victory.